Hi all, we are here to talk about Rick Owens' Autumn Winter 19 menswear show. Particularly interesting invites, I mentioned this morning on Instagram, the invites often come in this shape. In fact, they always come in this shape. Sometimes thick leathers, sometimes treated. This time cardboardy and silver, which at first, when we first saw this, we were a bit like, oh, silver, what does that mean? Particularly with Rick having done two very Apocalypse Now shows for women's and for men's. There was fire, there was coloured smoke. The coloured smoke was the men's. So silver tends to feel slightly more party, I would say. So already interested in what this means, and often, I mean, I am reading into a slam, but these are often explanatory of the show to come. So the show in the Palais de Tokyo, as it is every season, this was slightly different, as they had a huge spotlight in the corner, all dark, all dimly lit, everyone running around going, hey, 51, where am I? And the light beams on and kind of goes around almost a bit like a lighthouse, but much more, much less nautical and much more kind of spotlighty, stage lighting almost. The looks come out to the tune of ABBA's Gimme, After Midnight, but in a real rock version. Rick Owens always has this amazing power with music, and it really transforms the collection and the mood and everything. There's been shows where it was really, really intense gabba, designed to make you feel very uncomfortable and a little on edge. There's been shows with beautiful musicals, Baubles, Bangles and Beads, I will never forget that beautiful song, which automatically changes as well, gives you a positive attitude. So this was really interesting. Give Me a Man After Midnight automatically makes you think of slightly nightcrawler-ish club goers, which makes sense with the silver now. Slightly seedy undertone, and the clothes were not seedy, but certainly much more rock in their element, glam rock, you could almost say. Not necessarily 70s, but there was an element of that. There were men in heels, which was fantastic. Huge clomping great platforms, long-haired models for the majority. For the minority, there was wispy hair at the back, which is a continuation of the past 2 or 3 seasons of having skull caps and peaked hair. White faces continued as well. We had 2 or 3 of those. Large red sunglasses, which was actually kind of 70s, but with a futuristic spin. Really, really, really stunning coats. Shearling was absolute king here. Massive, oversized shearling in blacks, greys. There was an all brown look that again was really sumptuous and lovely. Interestingly, I've said this to Cal in passing before, that menswear trousers, aside from New Celine, tends to be quite straight-legged or wide-legged, and Rick continues with the wide leg. He does that often, which they pull at the floor just so you can catch the trainers underneath or the boots underneath. These were in burgundy with different stripe down the front in a slightly different texture, but there was actually skin-tight trousers at Rick, which, aside from Celine, as I said, is a new silhouette that we don't often see. The skin-tight trouser has been long gone for a while, and it's interesting to see that back in these leathers and textures with heels at the bottom and cropped puffers. These were amazing. Tubular arms that were part shearling, part puffer, or puffered here and then a belted area here, shearling with cable belts. The outerwear was absolutely fantastic and really wearable, and often with Rick sometimes you get such bulbous shapes or such draping looks that you wouldn't necessarily see someone walking down the high street in, but a lot of these shearling coats you could definitely see someone who wasn't potentially into Rick walking into a store and being like, oh, I just happen to love this coat. So really strong, I think. The last model who walked, we have a hunch that it is the musician.
Yeah, who made the soundtrack.
Yeah, because last time Tommy Cash, who did the soundtrack for the Smoke performance, or was it the Fire one?
Smoke performance.
Smoke performance, walked as well, so we have a feeling, but we're not entirely sure. But yeah, I was thoroughly impressed. Really loved the effeminate energy with the heels, but also this really strong, powerful masculine energy too. The music gave it this real rock stride, and the models were also walking in really tight, very fast formation. So it was very strong, very powerful, and really beautiful, I thought.
I think also, as you said, the models were walking very close together, very fast. They had somewhere to go, and normally with a Rick show they actually walk out. There's a big gap between each model, so these feel like these lone, statuesque men, especially when they have the wider trousers on. They're these huge plinths of a person. It's very impressive, but actually to have them all together in this tighter silhouette really made it feel like an army, a group of people. Which, again, you don't normally see it. They're normally these lone figures. Also, I think it was really clever to do a slightly more commercial collection, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, neither were you.
No.
I think Rick can sometimes be quite daunting to a customer who's not so aware of this, but actually this really showed off the best of Rick in construction and in tailoring and in fit, but actually was a lot more wearable, and I imagine maybe even a bit more affordable, because some of the puffer jackets were less puffed. You know, Rick's an extremely expensive designer, as he should be, because his quality is some of the highest that I've seen ever. But it was and this spotlight that we saw, that was a bit like the Batman spotlight, pretty much.
That's a very good way
really accentuated the silhouette, which was completely key here. This tighter change of silhouette that obviously is, I hope, is a new continuation for the brand. And you know, I just think it was such a clever way to move away from what we've seen, because lots of people have encroached on Rick's territory since he moved away from kind of the skinny rock. So going back there, and especially now when people are starting to look at what he's been doing and starting to take elements from it, is a real power play, I think, and one that worked very well for him.
I'm really interested in the whole idea of this like rock group, as in this like intimidating group of guys who would come into a club and be like, get out my seat, pour me a drink. They have this authority that you get with when you wear Rick, and that's kind of infectious. You want to put on the clothes, you want to have that power, which is really smart. But I will say it was an interesting move away from this apocalyptic idea that we've been seeing for the past 2 or 3 seasons.
But then we've seen it so much more this season.
True.
So I feel like that makes sense that Rick would be moving away from that as people are moving into that.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure. I see what you're doing, and I'm moving away. I've done that now. Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it's nice to have this empowering collection. Not to say that the previous ones weren't, but it's nice. The previous ones are kind of, it's the end of the world as we know it. Like, here's the outfit you should be wearing to prepare yourself. And this kind of feels like a strong, no matter what happens, I'm going to look fabulous, I'm going to be strong, I'm going to be fantastic, I'm going to be striding at the pace of light.
This really highlighted the men, whereas before the clothes became this new form, kind of not so much human, you know, twists, turns, all of that, whereas this really highlighted the silhouette of a man, the shape of a man, and kind of elevated it, especially, you know, we're talking very high platforms.
Literally elevated.
that weighted the models down, so they really had power when they walked. Their silhouette was strong. There
was also a collaboration with trainers, and I'm going to pronounce this brand wrong, I'm really sorry, but it's Veja, or Veja. And so that was really interesting, because they're a brand that seems to be on the creeping rise at the moment. You see them a lot on street style and a lot on editors. So an interesting collaboration, but they're also a brand that's doing a lot more ethical and trying to be as vegan as possible and as eco as possible. So I think that's quite an interesting move for Rick to collaborate with them on trainers. And they were kind of simple white with a pull up at the back.
They were, as we say, commercial, but really it didn't feel like he had been forced to put them in there. It really worked with the collection.
Not at all. And it's interesting that he's decided to move away from his Adidas he normally collaborates.
Yes, I think Adidas was too big, too all-powerful. From what I've heard, is that there was a lot. He had to tell them what they were doing. It wasn't so much. There was a lot of constraints on him to do Adidas. Obviously, put him in a really great position doing that collaboration. But I think it actually wasn't beneficial to him and his process, because I think he likes things to be very organic. And Adidas, as with most huge companies, need to know where they're going for the next 2 years, not the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, so all round, a really impressive show, great fashion, great presentation, great music, thoroughly impressed. So that's our Rick Owens unwrap. Thanks guys, we'll see you soon.